Without much ado, we must start this session. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining. We are very, very excited to have you over. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you for inviting me here, as I said earlier. And talking to students is always my favorite thing. And that's where, is the motivation when you said that, I took out time on my Sunday evening, but, missing out something which is exciting to talk to all of you is something which totally makes up for, yeah, sharing the time here. So yeah, that's what it is, right? Though you've already given, a very detailed profile about myself. But in short, if I were to, tell everyone what am I would say I'm someone who has lived several lives in my entire career. Starting from a BI expert to someone who started doing a lot of data engineering, data crunching, and then moved on to become someone who would start drawing insights from the data, not really doing very technical, very, I would say, cool doing statistical analysis, etc., but just, drawing insights from the data, just summarizing the data, etc. And then moved on to do a lot of, modeling through traditional statistical models and followed by ML models. Then for last 3 years, I've been more or less, an AI/ML expert doing a lot of digital transformation. And recently, when I joined MX, I am now being the product owner for a enterprise-wide AI/ML product. And why I again talked about all of this is because I want to tell all of you that being a AI/ML practitioner is not only about writing those cool AI/ML models, but it is about doing things end to end. And that's exactly going to be the essence of what I'm going to talk to all of you today. With that, I would also like to just mention that this talk is not going to be something in which I'll keep talking. I would want all of you to interact with me, because this is what will make this talk, relevant to you as well. Because, when I was a student, I had like tons and tons of questions. And, I was waiting for someone to come and, answer those questions for me. And whenever these kind of talks would happen, I would be the one who would be asking a lot of questions. And it used to be always a lot of fun. So I would really appreciate anyone who has any questions, just throw that out. I'm happy to answer. And mind you, no question is a stupid question, right? It remains stupid unless it is not answered. And I always feel that even if you feel it is a stupid question, then by asking that question, you will be stupid for 2 minutes, but by not asking that question, you'll be stupid forever. So, just make sure that there is a lot of dialogue in the entire, time that we're going to spend together. And would really want to hear what are the, when you guys have enrolled in this XPGDM course, right? And which is specifically into data science, and you are aiming to become the data science, ML, AI experts in future, what is in that you're looking forward to, and how I can help you guide in that. Okay, all right. So with that, wanted to maybe throw a couple of things, and I would really want people to raise their hands, unmute themselves, and just, let me know more about what do you think about it. So tell me, if anyone of you know, what is the proportion of the cool ML models that we build that actually goes into production and makes something for the organization? Any idea, anyone? You can type in as well, or you can unmute yourself and speak.
Hi, Mamta. This is Sultan.
Hi, Sultan.
Less than 10%, I would say.
Okay, wonderful. That's exactly what Adityanshu is also saying. Wonderful. I would say not even less than 10%. I would say less than 5%, right? This number has increased over time, right? Traditionally, if I were to say, last 10 years back, or even last 5 years back, this number was less than 5%, right? Over the period of time, it has started increasing a bit, but, that's what it is. And that's where, I wanted to just talk about digital transformation, and what is it that it takes for the organizations to really do that digital transformation. It's not only, about building those models, but it is also about how do we do that end to end. So tell me now, what is the most important thing when you think about digital transformation? What is that one top most important thing one should think of, or the organization should think of when they are thinking of digital transformation?
But I would like to answer that, ma'am.
Sure, please.
I think that whatever transformation, it should lead to tangible benefits.
Okay.
Like it can be lead to cost reduction or whatever we are doing. It should, monetize the benefits. We can see that yes, whatever the cost we were incurring before and after the digital transformation, the benefits has yielded in a way that we can monetize it. Ki pehle itna tha, but now we are doing better.
Okay, good one. Anyone else? Sumit?
So digital transformation should be equally beneficial for the company as well as the stakeholders for whomsoever we are doing it.
Okay. What is digital transformation? First of all, if someone can answer that. I see Gautam is raising hands. And Shaunak? Hello, hello. Lot of hands.
I can answer that if no one is answering. I can answer that.
Sure, Akash. Please take it ahead.
Digital transformation is something like whatever manual interventions you are doing, you are shifting your process to more into, digitally, and it can be using digital systems, whatever you're using, bringing the robotics thing, bringing the automation thing, usage of AI and ML. So bringing all into, digital, whatever you were doing manually, अब आप पूरा उसको system के through you are running it.
Okay, makes sense. All
May
right.
I add something to this?
Of course, Avinash.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think that digital transformation is most of the time is thought about only about cool technologies. Sometimes it is forgotten that the main objective of the digital transformation is having harmony among interrelated components or departments. So the larger goal should be kept in mind rather than having just good technologies. So I mean the technologies should be bought according to the need of the business. I mean the business should be kept into the picture.
Okay, that's amazing. Wonderful. All right. So yes, I think, most of you are making a lot of sense to me, and that is exactly what I wanted to discuss as well, right? When people talk about digital transformation, majority of the time, people feel that digital transformation is equivalent to bringing AI and ML, right? But that is not what digital transformation is. Even if you're doing a simple data extraction, right? And automating it so that next time when you're doing it, it is not taking the same similar time or the similar effort. That is also considered as a digital transformation. But okay, if I'm just talking about data now, right? Tell me, what is the one single biggest challenge that one faces when, or an organization faces when we are talking about digital transformation?
Adaptable to changes. They love the conventional methods.
They will switch from manual intervention to, they will have to educate people, the employees, to use that new technology. And also,
even before that, right? Before that, how do you, and I think somebody in the beginning mentioned about that as well, right? Why, first of all, how you will decide that digital transformation is going to happen, right? Right. So there has to be an objective behind it. Why digital transformation we want to do, which is what I think someone mentioned that, I think Akash, you were mentioning that whether it is for cost reduction or it is to bring in efficiencies, etc., etc. So if that is the case, right, the most, crucial step is for us to figure out what is that we are going to solve as a result of digital transformation. At times, the organizations get confused even at this first step itself, and they feel that in the rat race of doing digital transformation because everyone else do it, let me also do it, right? If that becomes an objective, then we don't know why we want to do it. So in order to come up with, the idea behind what is digital transformation, why we want to do it for my particular organization, it is very important for me to figure out what my organization right now, where my organization right now sitting at, right? What is the objective I want to solve if I'm going to go for digital transformation, right? And then the next important thing is, do I have the right skills to do that or not, right? Once I understand that this is where I'm going to do, I have the right skills, or if I don't have the right skills, fine, I want to go in the market, figure out, if someone else can do it for me, etc., etc. That's when you should then start thinking of all the, the change that will go on within the organization, the mindset change, etc., etc. But before that, make sure that you understand why you're going for it and what is it that it is going to solve for you. Because if your objective is clear, then you will always focus on achieving that end objective whenever you're going through the entire digital transformation process. And then only you'll be able to take the right steps to achieve to that end objective. Most of the time, organizations are, like I said, right, in the spirit of competition, they want to do it because their closest competitor is doing it. They're coming in news, their stock price is increasing. So I also want to call my data to be digitally driven, and I want to say that I'm using AI and ML so that tomorrow in my the results meeting, quarterly results updates, etc., I can say that we've invested so much into digital transformation, this is how we are going to do, etc., etc. Those all things work, but work only in short term. For some time, your investors, your customers will start feeling that you're going on the right track by doing all of these things. But if it is not solving that end objective where your business wants to move, it will all fail. You will do a lot of investment, but without having that objective, your investment will also go for a toss, right? So it is very, very important that you know your objective well in place, which is what Akash you also mentioned. But at the same time, you should also know if you have the right skills to do it or not. And if not, then that analysis of where will you get those skills is important, right? And I want to talk about skills here because we as this group is the group which will be able to bring in those skills to the market, right? So it is important for us to understand what are those right skills which are required for digital transformation. Okay, all right, wonderful. So once we've identified, right, that digital transformation is needed, these are the skills required, etc., what is the next step that we think of in the digital transformation journey? The next best challenge, change management still would come later on, but next best challenge, what is that? Arush, Arya, Akshay.
Data privacy. Generating the data.
Okay, generating the data. Awesome.
I would say that understanding where your current maturity in terms of your digital transformation is something that should be the next step.
But that's we've already done, right? To identify, do we have the right skills to reach from where we were to where we want to go?
Then the kind of identifying processes which might need interference in terms of digital transformation.
Okay, good.
Leverage that data.
Yeah. So most important, right? Once we've identified that, this is the objective that is there for my digital transformation, these are the skills which will be required because I know that, these are the changes that I'm going to do in my processes and all of that, right? I've identified the skills. Now, what happens is I have to now start initiating all of that digital transformation. And when we talk about digital transformation, it's about bringing in efficiencies through various processes. Period, right? Nothing more than that. Now that could be using AI ML, it could be using just simple RPA, or it could be anything else, right? But what is the main ingredient to do all of that is, do you have the right data? Which is what I think somebody mentioned about data privacy. But even before you think of data privacy, think about, do you have the right data itself or not, right? Because we as organizations, we keep coming up with a lot of data, right? But we don't know, what this data is going to get used for. We are generating data. We do not have right data interpreters in our own organizations because we end up using a lot of, vendors to offer us certain tools which are generating a lot of data, but then that having someone as a data steward in the organization is extremely important, right? Someone who understands your business, someone who understands the data that you're generating and is able to marry those two things together. And that's one of the most required skill in today's world. And that is one of the most underestimated skill that people feel. And I wanted to bring this entire group's attention to this skill, because usually people always feel that, I want to do digital transformation and I want to learn those, cool ML, DL models. And that's where majority of the students keep focusing on. What they forget is, even if you know that how you're going to build those, really cool models, but the entire digital transformation process is on the model building is not even 5% of the entire process, right? The rest 95% has majority of it to do with data. And I would say, in the rest 95%, at least 70 to 75% of it is all about data. And that's where it is extremely important to focus a lot on, do you have the right data, and having someone who understands if the right data is there or not, right? Yes, I'll pause here. Kajal, you're raising your hand. Shorab, you're raising your hand. So yeah.
Yeah, ma'am, apart from all this, when I was going through this data science and machine learning thing, whatever data transformation, digital transformation coming in the field, I first thing I learned about is data cleaning. So what the thing you're mentioning, that this is a biggest challenge, but from where I see, or from where I have learned all this, I see this is the first thing we do. So, so it is all, as per my understanding, it is already being taken care of. So how is it a challenge yet?
No, not really, Kajal. And I were to, if I were to tell you from my experience, because, my previous 8 years have been into consulting, where for last 3 years, I was focusing a lot on digital transformation for most of my clients. And what I had seen, for majority of my clients is, no one in the organization, first of all, understands the data. Forget about cleaning. They don't even know what data exists in their organization. They don't even know, who owns what data, because over the period of time, they have, plugged into so many different systems, which is creating so many data, data artifacts from different sides. But there is no one in the organization who even understands what data do they have, what does it mean, right? So that data interpretation is extremely important. Then comes data cleaning, right? Once you understand what it is, then only you'll be able to clean. Otherwise, how do you know whether it is, how to clean the data itself? Needs a data understanding.
Just one adding to it, it's a very basic question, maybe a stupid one. So since we are saying that as everybody know that data cleaning is the major part, and if still this is a challenge, then how are we able to see a big transformation in data and digital world? Then how is it being done?
I'll tell you, Kajal. See, we've been talking about data cleaning and all of that for last 20 years, I would say, right? Right. And what happens is, when we, at that point of time, when we were talking about it, that time it was, we were only focusing on some of the use cases, specific use cases. And for that use case, how will I data clean? How will I do XYZ? Right? But now when we talk about digital transformation, it is an enterprise-wide initiative. It is not for a particular use case, right? So for a particular use case, you would still do data cleaning. And that's where I think you're coming from when you were saying that, isn't that already taken care of? Yes, it is.
Yeah.
But for specific use cases. But when it comes to, enterprise-wide digital transformation, what is required is not only data cleaning, but what it also requires is, you need to understand the clear data lineages. What is the source of the data? What does it mean? How do I connect one data to another data? And all of that in a very clearly articulated, that there has to be one place, someone in the organization who needs to understand all of this. And that is, I would say,
I think
the sole part of the organization, which is the most valuable part, right? So, that coming up with that lineages, defining the right data governance processes. I have a lot of data, but is it complete? I have a lot of data, but is it accurate, right? There has to be someone who would come and define these data governance KPIs to say that what does completeness mean to me? What does accuracy mean to me? Am I tracking that on a regular basis, right? Because you're generating so much of new data every day. Social media itself is generating so much of data, right? So any organization nowadays cannot sustain without having social media presence. So a lot of data is coming from there also, and newer data sources are getting added every other day. So who would take responsibility to ensure that whatever is coming in, it's not just creating junk in my system and only taking up a lot of money inventory and creating a data inventory, but I also know how to use that, right? Because data is good and is called the gold and the new oil and all of that, as long as you know what that data is.
Yeah, thank you. That answers my question. In fact, from your answer, I can see there's big new universe to explore and work on in this particular topic. Thank you so much.
Certainly. Okay, I know Bharat, Prasad, Gagan, Sharab, you're raising your hands. I think Sharab, you raised it earlier as well, so I'll pick you one first.
Yeah, hi ma'am.
Hi.
So my question is regarding the approach from performance-driven organization to data-driven organization. And when you move from performance-driven to data-driven, there are a lot of metrics that actually changes. And it is not easy for any organization to choose or transition from performance to data-driven. Because in data-driven, usually you have a lot of data which you are talking about. And the metrics which we actually touch upon are actually completely different, which we usually do in performance-driven. And last decade, most of the organizations were mostly performance-driven, based on, and there were integration between multiple sources, multiple data sources. And now we are moving to data-driven approach, wherein we'll be using data warehouse, data lake, a lot of those things. So how difficult it is for an organization to move from performance-driven, which is already a well-established strategy, to a data-driven, and which may or may not fail, because there might be hypothesis the data actually delivers results. But when a company is already performing with respect to performance-driven culture, why it is necessary to actually move from one to another, which may seem like in terms of cost, it is huge. And because now you have to install a lot of data warehouses, lakes and all. So just wanted to, if you can put some light on that, because this is a very critical issue for anybody.
Certainly. See, first of all, the organization should neither be performance driven nor should be data driven, right? If you're saying, and this is what a common mistake all the organizations do, whenever they think of digital transformation, they feel that digital transformation would magically do something such that their performance would shoot up like anything. That's not the case, right? And that's the biggest mistake. And that's where, they start on a very enthusiastic path. And after some time, when they see that they are investing a lot, but still they're not seeing, that jump in the performance, they get disappointed and then they leave halfway through, right? That is the reason I would say the organization should neither be performance driven nor should be data driven. They should understand what the organization stand for and define, the KPIs around that. So every organization, I would say, should be customer obsessed. That if that is the, the vision that they are keeping, right, for themselves, then performance is actually a byproduct and it will come automatically. They don't really need to, they obviously need to track it. No two ways about it, right? But they should not be performance obsessed. They should be customer obsessed. So for example, if I talk about, Amazon, they call themselves customer obsessed, right? And in a lot of things that they do, they always think from a customer perspective, right? You would have heard Jeff Bezos a lot of time in some of their talks, right? And whenever they're thinking of, bringing any new product or, any new services, etc., their focus is always how will it work for the customer. Similarly, MX, right? We are a very, very customer obsessed organization. We always feel how we will be able to bring in that, premium services to our customers. So when you are customer obsessed or customer focused, performance will automatically come. Data driven is only to enable all of this, right? You need to make the decisions based on data and not on the gut feeling, etc., right? So that your decisions are factual. But I can tell you there is no magic which would happen if you make your organization as a data driven organization. It will bring in a lot of efficiencies. It will make your processes very fast. It will cut down a lot of cost, and it will help you track better, but it will obviously not improve the performance of your sales force, etc., from the way they cater to their customers. It will help them enhance their productivity, is what I'll say.
Yeah, thanks, ma'am. Just an extension, because when I touch consumer, I also need to touch employee as well. So because it's not a standalone thing that you are investing in your customer, but even your employees are also your customer. Exactly. And you have to invest in both, and digitally as well, because there is the concept of high touch and high tech. So you have to choose between the two and have a balance between the two. So how critical it is to decide both at the same time, that this is how I'm going to decide with respect to my customer point of view, having a good customer experience, but at the same time to have a good employee experience, because unless you have that, I'm always a proponent of employee experience first than customer experience.
See, I'll say one thing for that, Sharab. An employee who's not happy cannot make your customers happy, period. Right? So if you're not investing in your employees, howsoever employee or customer obsessed you are, you will never be able to achieve that, because it is the people who makes your customers happy, right? If they're not happy, they will not be able to do that. So it is extremely important for organizations to invest heavily in their employees first, right? But at the same time, employees should also be educated at the same time that ultimate objective for their performance is to make life better for their customers.
Yeah, ma'am. Thanks for the insight.
Awesome. So if I move on, right, we talked about data cleanliness, data availability. We talked about data lineages, data governance, all of that, right? Once, let's say you've set up all of this, and majority of the organization, when they are doing digital transformation these days, the first and the foremost thing we do for them or we do for ourselves is to create that clean bedrock of data, which becomes the single source of truth for anything and everything that they are going to do, in their organization. Which means that I've seen so many organizations in which, when we go on their digital transformation journey in my previous organization, what I'd seen was a single KPI could have as much as 32 to 35 definitions. So if we are saying, define sales, the sales itself can have 32 to 35 definitions. And it is extremely important for the organizations to really standardize the way they talk about KPIs within their organization also, right? One, they have to have single source of truth, so that, the sales department versus the marketing department versus, let's say, customer service department, whenever they're talking about a certain KPI, they all understand it as one, right? They all know where it is all coming from, and hence they can all focus on it in a similar way, right? So while we talk about data cleanliness, data governance, all of that, the next thing which comes after doing that, bedrock of data, is to define what are those important, tracking KPIs for my organization, and if there is a standardized way of defining them across the entire organization. It is a very big exercise, team, I'll tell you, right? It takes years to make this correct. But once you do that, and once you've established those governance processes around, these metrics, definitions, etc., that becomes a very strong base for your, next step within digital transformation journey. I'll pause here. Farida, you're saying something.
Hi, ma'am. Thanks for all the insights. I have one question related to you asked about like this activity which will take more time. So I want to understand from the organization perspective. So let's say you have decided that you want to go for a digital transformation journey, or probably the feasibility analysis. So you establish one team, and for, I mean, I have worked in utility industries where there are a lot of data, and it's all across different platforms. So, and you know that the knowledge also, I mean, the knowledge gap is also there pretty much everywhere. Unless the SMEs are assembled and discussed about those processes, it cannot be, I mean, streamlined to discuss that. So how, I mean, as a digital transformation team, as an organization, how we'll approach to, I mean, what is the best approach to get it done quickly, as you said?
See, first of all, why we have seen this gap, right? It is important to understand that. And that is because, you know, so far we've been doing a lot of work on data, right? But like I mentioned in the beginning itself, right? Data stewards are someone who were totally underestimated so far, right? So there is no one in the organization who really understands the entire organization data end to end, right? And when I'm saying no one, I'm not talking about one person, but there's not even a single, you know, department in any of the organizations which understands data end to end, right? And it is very natural for that to happen because it's a big, you know, any organization is a big organization. There are so many processes through which data is coming, etc. But that's where it becomes very, very important for any organization to set strong processes, which not only is, you know, creating the clean data, you know, coming up with the right lineages, etc., but at the same time is creating that those strong artifacts and doing a lot of documentation, which is, you know, self-serve and is intuitive for anyone to understand and is in a centralized place which is accessible to everyone, so that, you know, even if today you have someone who's taking care of it, there is, you know, obviously in the organization the attrition happens and, you know, new people come in, there are new processes come in, etc. But always keep track of where your data is, create processes, create documentation, so that it is, you know, it's not people dependent, but it is, you know, self-serve in nature. And that's where you can you can, you know, do it much faster than what you would otherwise expect.
And yeah, thank you, ma'am. And one more question related to that is the agile methodology or agile way of thinking help in this case, like divide and conquer, like independent stories in some areas you will develop and
agile, yeah, agile methodology would help in any you know, project that you work on, right? Not only about data, but anywhere. It's a framework of you know, doing a project, right? When we talk about agile framework, it's more about, you know, how you are obviously, like you said, maybe divide and conquer, right? But at the same time also being agile throughout it, which means that, you know, whenever there is a need for someone else to get something else to get prioritized, you are doing that, you know, on the fly, you know. So it's a framework, not particularly from a, you know, data perspective or anything of that sort, but it is something which is universal, and that is another very you know, important skill in this entire digital transformation journey. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right. So lot of questions are coming in, I know, but we have a lot of contents to cover as well. So I just wanted to, you know, take one more thing from my list, and then I'll start taking up questions again. Okay. So once you have set up the right governance processes, you have defined your KPIs, etc. Then it comes to, you know, how you're going to use all of this data, all of this, you know, the variables, etc., that you've created to really use those machine learning models, or you know, any of those may not be machine learning, but, you know, any type of models to understand your data better or to draw insights from the data, right? Once you have done that, right, and you know, the very important thing is for any practitioner in the AI ML domain to not get really, you know, overwhelmed with all the, you know, various tools and techniques that are available in the, you know, ML facet of, you know, skills. But what is more important for us to understand as the practitioners is what would fit in where and what is the need, right? There could be certain problems, business problems, which can be solved by a simple, data extraction or by doing a simple data summary. There could be some others, let's say, for example, fraud prediction or, targeting customers and things like that, which may need more sophisticated models, right? So it is important for the organization to understand that what can be solved by what kind of techniques and tools, right? Building a machine learning model, of course, used to be very difficult if I were to say about 3 to 4 years back. But today there are so many various, ways and so many self-serve tools, which makes it very easy for someone to build the model, even if they don't understand the model, right? And that's where most of the practitioners feel that tomorrow will my job be stolen because the softwares are able to develop models which are maybe better than my models, right? And that's where I want to tell all of you that the human intervention will never be replaced by machines, right? We always say that, for example, there are certain tools like Data Robot, H2O, etc., and they have some, self-serve ways of doing. We are talking about auto retraining, etc., etc. All of that is happening, right? And as a result, you would feel that sense of insecurity. But what still stays with us is how do we interpret, the result of these models? How do we tie it back to the business objective that we are trying to solve, right? And that's where the whole concept of explainability, interpretability is coming into the picture, right? Now, I would want to ask a question to all of you as to what do we mean by responsible AI, and how is that related to all of that we talk about, explainability, interpretability, etc.
Anything that's in a controlled environment, but still it's given its own freedom to develop over a period of time, provided that we have in data coming in regularly, but with moderation.
Okay, when you're saying controlled environment, Bharat, what do you mean by that?
So that in case someday it's not behave, by someday I mean I don't know specific time frame, since I have since it's still a possibility and a speculation. By that I mean that someday if it goes beyond what it was actually supposed to solve as a solution to a problem, we should be able to take control of it. It shouldn't be that we should be into a damage control before. I mean, we should be there for a damage control before we speculate it, not after enough damage has been done. So a control environment would help me restrain that easily.
Okay, all right. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would like to draw it from my own experience. We have actually acquired a company, and once the company was acquired, we were to retain some of the employees from the acquired company.
Okay.
And so as to do so, we use this video-based interview and recruitment tool, wherein AI and ML was utilized. So what happened, after a certain period of time, it was seen that the tool was actually biased against female candidates. And it happened. In reality, it happened.
Yes.
So that is one of the drawbacks initially, if you're not feeding your data well. And if the diversity of data is not there, then it will draw inferences and conclusions from the same set of data, and which may or may not be biased. So it is only a machine which, as Bharat has already said, like touched that point, it is a machine which needs to be controlled from human intervention. Unless you do so, you cannot let AI and ML to actually give conclusion and decision for you. By the end of the day, you are supposed to be taking decisions on behalf of AI and ML. ML and AI could support you, facilitate the process, but by the end of the day, it needs to be your conscious decision to either take it or not.
Okay. So both yourself, Rab and Bharat, both of you mentioned about, letting the machine take a decision, but in a controlled environment. So if I were to say, right, if I were to bifurcate responsible AI into two, branches, I would say one branch is all about how responsibly we are, implementing AI, right? Which means that there are few things, right? For example, I don't want my model to be biased. So I don't want, things like gender, ethnicity, religion, region, whatever, right? All of those things to play so that, my model is being biased to a certain group of people, right? That's one side of it. Second side of it, to support it, is interpretability, right? So my model, yes, let's forget about all of these variables which are more demographic in nature, which help us remain unbiased. That's one aspect, right? Second aspect which I am talking about interpretability is, even if we forget about all of these demographic variables or features, if we were to just look at the business features, right? For example, sales and I don't know, frequency of purchase, or if I were to talk about from a banking side, the number of defaults, all of that, right? If I were to just look at those quantitative variables or quantitative features, within that also, which feature is important, which feature is not important, why it is important, etc., that also I should be able to understand from my model. It should not become a black box, right? So responsible AI has both of these branches: one, not being biased, and second, not being black box. I should be able to understand both aspects of it, and I should be able to manage both aspects of it, right? That's where the ethical aspect of responsible AI come from, removing this bias, and the explainable AI comes from understanding what the variables, how important the variables are, and rightly able to interpret it, such that I know that if a customer is predicted to be someone who will buy a certain product, what are the factors which are contributing to that? Or if a customer is predicted to be someone who will default tomorrow, then what are the factors which are contributing to that, so that we are not taking a wrong decision for our customers. Okay, that is a third skill which is extremely niche and important, and is going to be very much in demand in coming times. So watch out, and make sure that whenever you are learning about any new machine learning model or deep learning model, for that sake, because of course compute is becoming easier for everyone, etc., right? So soon machine learning will also be something which will not be so much in demand, and deep learning would become more in demand. But at the same time, it is not only important for you to know how to build these models, but it is most important for you to understand what goes behind those models, so that you're able to really ensure this explainability part of it as well. All right.
Ma'am, I had a follow-up question with respect to what you said at this point in time. I'm not sure if this is the right way to put that question, but in lines with the scientific fiction movies that revolve around AI, machine learning, and data, do you see any immediate disadvantage or short-sighted damage that may come in if we don't have a control environment? At
the end of it, you should not leave anything on the machines totally, right? Which is done. Everyone agrees on that, right? How do you make it controlled is because on a regular basis you're tracking what the machine is doing, and if you notice anything which is not in line with what you expect, then you bring in the right intervention at the right time, right? That's where when we speak in the ML world and we are talking about auto retrainings, etc., also, then there are regular model tracking and model performance tracking dashboards and KPIs, etc., that we build, so that we are able to just make sure that this controlled environment is being enforced. And that's where I would just relate it to all the science fiction movies and books that you would have read or seen, right? Another thing which is extremely important is to also keep make sure that whenever you are building these models, right, you're just focusing, like I said, right, customer obsession is the key, right? So whenever the objective function is always to ensure that it is meeting the right objective of being customer obsessed, majority of the time you will end up selecting the right KPIs or the right features for the model, and would end up making this controlled environment in an effective way.
I would like to add on one point to this.
Yes, Yasmin.
Yeah, no, it's just about that what do you call controlled environment. When you talked about it, something came into my mind as there was an AI developed by Microsoft, which they deployed into Twitter. It had a Twitter account, and it started learning. It started interacting with people based on how people are interacting with each other on the Twitter platform. And what ended up being is that Twitter had to pull it back because it became a racist bot. So it started abusing people, and it became racist over time, learning from how we interact with each other. So that is, I think, one example of where we need to control and decide on where it learns from and how we are also accountable to it. So
sure, no, totally makes sense, Aswin. And in fact, that brings me to another point, which is what I have been discussing a lot these days, within my organization and with a lot of people that I've been talking to. NLP, is also a very, is an upcoming area, right? We've been doing a lot of work in that area for last couple of years. How many of you feel that NLP would still remain as important as it is right now versus in next few years?
Yeah, good evening, ma'am. So my take on this is that, so as Google or these giants are already working on all these algorithms, so in the future it will be an simple plug-in system. Like Google has started giving their APIs for maps and all these things. So all these smaller players in the final destination will vanish, and only the big giants will remain.
Okay. First of all, tell me, have you spoken to any bot which is NLP driven?
Yeah, so multiple bots is being established on different portals. So for example, the IRCTC has established one bot on their website where you could get general information about your ticketing and all those things. But
is that NLP based?
That I don't know.
Alexa.
Okay. Yes, Alexa, certainly speech, right. So Alexa is, one of the exceptional ones, but majority of the organization these days, how many of you use Amazon?
Majority, I guess.
Yeah.
I think all of us will be using
All of us,
Amazon.
right?
Yes.
Have you ever talked to the customer service bot on Amazon? Or let's say to most of the banks, even MX bot, right?
Yeah.
How many of you feel that it is NLP based?
Most, I don't think I'm not sure at the times I've been able to tell the difference.
It might be NLP based to some extent, ma'am. Not for all. I mean, they would have predefined queries that would answer a question until some extent. Whether it might be monitored through a person behind, and after that crosses a certain threshold, it will navigate to the human counterpart behind the.
What is happening, Surbhet? Most of the time nowadays, the organizations have realized that past 3-4 years, we were spending a lot of time and effort to just understand what the customer or the user is trying to say to us, right? By doing NLP, right? So intent identification was very, very important, right? And at the end of it, if you've built a strong bot which is able to identify the intent, good. If not, then you end up, giving a service which is only leading to customer frustration rather than delight. Right. And that's the reason you would have seen most of the time these days, the bots are very option based, right? You go to the bot will ask, is it about, what do you want to talk about? Is it about an order, all of, those options which is given to us. Then you select a particular option. Then, furthermore, some options come and then you select. So, organizations are now moving from a, intent prediction to actually asking for an intent, right? In that case, you are basically reducing a lot of effort in building something which will interpret to really focusing on developing something which is easy to develop, right? An option based, and really asking the user itself or user himself or herself, what is the intent, right? So let's forget about, predicting what the user wants. And what they do is, they'll ask you these questions, and the moment, the ask becomes a little complicated, then they transfer it to, someone who's a real agent, right? So over the period of time, this is what is going to happen. The NLP is only going to get used to identify what kind of intents are coming in, but not to interact with the user, right? And basis on those intents, which will come as a result of NLP, these options will get enhanced. That's how I see it, is what is going to happen in future, right? These options will get more finer, etc., so that the user has a more, smooth experience. Right now, of course, we still, for some of the bots, we still get frustrated because they keep giving us the same options, right? So the NLP will be used to enhance these options rather than really predicting what you want to say, is what my take is on this, right? Hence, it is important for us to have those NLP skills as the ML practitioners, but at the same time, what is more important for us to have skills which would lead to productionization than just doing NLP. And that's where, the next thing about, the next important skill that I was talking about comes into the picture, right? We spoke about data stewards. We spoke about, can anyone tell me what all skills we spoke about so far? One was data steward. What was the second one?
And we talked about creating a clean bedrock of data, having a single
data
source
governance
of
skills, right?
truth.
Yes. So someone who understands the data, someone who knows how to govern the data. So data governance. The third skill was more about, someone who
data cleaning.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So all the data engineering skills, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so we've defined data steward, we've defined data governance, we've defined data engineering, we've defined someone who understands the important KPIs for the organization, right? So those really insight managers, right? That's the fourth skill. The fifth skill that we just talked about is someone who, the fifth skill that we talked about was really ML modelers, right? But the most important skills after having all of these is someone who will be able to productionize all of this that we are, talking about so far. Anything which is done, as a thumb rule, what I follow is anything which is done more than thrice, anything which is repeated more than 2 times should be automated and should be productionized. So 4th time, I should not do anything manually if it is repeated more than 3 times, right? That is what is going to be a very important skill in future. How do you productionize your process end to end, right? You've built a nice NLP algorithm to figure out what is the intent, etc., etc. But how would you make it work end to end? How will your user going to see it? So writing those user stories, and that's where, this product owner role is becoming very important now, right? That is where those ML ops roles are becoming very important, right? That is where ML engineering. So there's one person who's called ML modeler. There is another person who's called ML engineers. And there is a, very subtle difference between these two. ML engineer is someone who would pick ML modeler's work and would really, productionize it end to end, right? Then there are more roles coming in, which are more of ML testers. So we are eventually going back to what we were doing in software engineering few years back and applying all of those, disciplines from the IT industry to the ML industry. And that's going to be the crux, right? And that's where I always recommend anyone who wants to, get started in the AIML arena, who wants to establish their career in this, entire industry, is to not get just obsessed about how to build a cool model, but to understand the process end to end. Think about all of these different roles and how you would play these different roles in your career. That's like how I was talking about my career, right? I started as a BI specialist. Then I did a lot of data crunching, so a part of data engineering role. Then I did an insight practitioner role, which is what I was mentioning about that insight manager. Then I started doing machine learning modeling role, which was just to build the model and showcase how that this model work. And then last couple of years I've been doing lot of work into digital transformation, and hence gotten an exposure towards ML engineering, ML testing, ML ops, all of that, creating those CI/CD pipelines and stuff like that, right? All of that. And now in my current role, I'm playing a role of a product owner. I own this IDA product, which is an enterprise-wide AI and ML platform that we are creating for all the modelers in MX environment, and creating the right tools which will help them do the journey end to end, right? And that's where I was talking about those PO roles, wherein you would be able to then see what would be the user journey, do the envisioning and all of that. So there is a lot of things that we can do in this industry, and we should just not get very focused on only writing ML modeling codes, right? Which is just not even a 5 to 10% of the entire spectrum. I'll pause again.
Yeah, ma'am. Just a very brief question regarding this. That mostly what I have seen, that most of those queries are solved by decision tree.
Okay.
Almost 90% of them. So for the rest, maybe 10%, if you are using NLP, why don't we stick to the human touch?
See, that 10% is also a big proportion, right? That's the reason you don't want to still, do with the human touch, because the volumes of that 10%, think about a company like Amazon. Look at the revenue that they're generating. And if you just apportion it, right, that 10% is also a big one. That's where you still want to do NLP, but you should use NLP to make your machine, perform better and come up with the better options for the customers, rather than trying to, use it to really identify the customer intent. Because things like, sarcasm, or if the customer is frustrated and things like that, those are still not getting captured by, NLP. Not even Alexa is able to interpret those very well so far. Right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. So, ma'am, I have one question. So, as a consultant, so when we pitch digital transformation solution to clients, initially they will happily accept it. But as we go ahead in the journey, we get more and more roadblocks from the internal stakeholders.
Yes.
So, as the work will, so their issue is that their work will get reluctant if we implement this solution. So according to you, how should we go forward with it to complete the transformation at least?
See, this is a very common problem that is seen at any client's end. And that is because, Adib, when the client has taken a decision, right, those the people sitting in the C-suite, right, they take up those decisions. And it is very important for them to align internally before they really, take up this on themselves, right? So as consultants, if let's say they have not done this alignment themselves, then as consultant, it is then becomes in a way our responsibility also to help them align within their organizations, right? So conducting those workshops, or doing those brainstorming sessions and trying to figure out what's in for each of them, right? There'll be few stakeholders which will do it very happily because it makes them shine better, right? They are leading those initiatives, so it helps them in their own achievement. But at the same time, there'll be few who would see their jobs at stake by doing all of this, right? There will be, let's say, a group of people who were just sitting and doing manual reporting. And if you bring in digital transformation, all of this will start happening automatically, right? So it is very important for the organizations when they take a decision to go on a digital transformation path, to first do a retrospective and also to understand how will they shape up their employees' career as a result of this transformation as well, right? Majority of it comes in very easy if and when they decide that they don't want to really just outsource all of it. Maybe outsource it in the beginning, but eventually they want upskill their own people and to handle it for sustainability, right? That way their own people will also see the meat in helping this digital transformation, because they are enhancing their skills as well. There'll still be some people, of course, Adib, who will not be happy with the transformation because they are aversing to change, and that's where the entire change organization or those operational transformation comes into the picture, where you have to do a lot of hand holding for them, do a lot of trainings, help them understand why it is important for their own careers as well as for the organization, and how they really don't have any other option but to acknowledge it and accept it, because this is how a lot of efficiency is going to come to the organization, and they themselves will be able to increase their productivity manifold.
Thank you.
Ma'am, I have a question.
Yes, Pratik.
Yeah, ma'am, actually, like right now, Adi talked about, problems that are faced by internal stakeholders or employees, because of this data digitalization. Ma'am, I just wanted to ask, I'm coming from an automotive background, manufacturing background. So there has been a lot of push, to digitalize a lot of processes in the company. But one thing that we face on a daily basis, or that I used to face on a daily basis, was that the vendors did not have any systems in place altogether. So even if I optimize the systems within the company to a very large extent, spend a lot of money, time and effort, even then, if the vendors' databases are not optimized, they're not digitalized, I still do not get 100% efficiency. Or on the other side, if the systems of the distributors are not digitalized, I still do not gain that efficiency. In this case, ma'am, how do we convince these external stakeholders to go ahead and invest their time and resources to go towards digitalization?
See, it's a very tricky question, Pratik. No clear answer for that. But what I have been doing doing this kind of alignment with my stakeholders is, one, to first of all help them understand how this digitalization will help them as well, right? Because it's not only going to bring in efficiencies in your system, but in the vendor system as well, right? They will also be able to do things in a more productive way as they as compared to what they're doing right now. But at the same time, they have their own priorities. They may not be ready to do it at the right time when you want to do it, right? That alignment has to come, right? And that's where these are the things which are required to be taken up before these decisions are invested into, right? Your decision making could have, you could do the decision making, right? But before you do heavy investment, you as a consultant or as the organization who wants to take up this digital transformation have to take a conscious decision whether and how much you want to live with these constraints. And there will never be a time when everyone will be aligned, Pratik, right? You'll always have to live with a part of it, right? So it's for the organization to really see that till what time is my threshold, and beyond that, if I'm getting something, then I should move ahead. Because eventually, when they'll see things moving, and these vendors are operating with so many clients, right? And if all of the clients are moving on this path eventually, so they'll have to come along as well. It's all about how much you want to do it. We should not just leave it to the last bullet to say that only when we'll achieve, let's say 100%, then I'll do it. Even if we feel that it is something like 60-70%, let me just do it, a part of it. It'll still bring in efficiency. I may still need to do a rework later on when the vendor comes on board, but that is what it is, right? You just can't have a perfect world.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Ma'am, I have a question, ma'am.
Yes, Taran.
So, ma'am, you had talked about that, every organization is generating huge amount of data. So, ma'am, along with that comes, a lot of false positives. So, which can actually drastically impact the decision. So, ma'am, my question is, how do we identify these false positives, and so that we can come to a proper decision?
Yeah, so Tarun, that I think most of the organizations are doing a pretty good job in that, right? Because you build certain models, the models are, throwing some predictions, and then eventually when you'll do those, use those predictions, if it is a low impact decision, you will still go ahead and, apply those and then see if the result is coming in favor or in line with what you expected. And if not, then you can always do a course correction. If it is a high impact, for example fraud, etc., right, you wouldn't want to go ahead with those decisions, and that's where you spend a lot of time in doing maybe a lot of hyperparameter tuning, etc., so that you're generating certain scenarios on which you're testing. You're doing a lot of out of sample, in sample, out of time, in time, and those kind of testings, so that you're trying to make it as accurate as possible. But of course, over the period of time, it's only the data which will help you improvise it further when you'll have more data to use and improvise. But I think organizations are realizing that it is doable, of course a function of time, but it's happening eventually.
Thanks.
Hi ma'am, actually I wanted to ask two questions.
Yes, yes.
So the first one is that, as you rightly mentioned, we expect that the data and definitions of KPI should be clearly defined and understood by the organization. There should be a single definition and everyone should be clear about it. However, if this expectation is not met, then how do we move about with the transformation? Do we make this as a priority to get it first, or how do we move ahead in such cases?
Like we were discussing just now also, right, there is no perfect world, Yash, right?
Yes.
You'll have to obviously, you just need to define your threshold to say that, fine, I have, let's say I'm just hypothetically saying I have 3,000 KPIs in my organization, right? And I am saying that these 20 KPIs are non-negotiable. So these 20 KPIs everyone has to agree on, right? And I start with that, right? And slowly, people will realize that once you've done for those 20 KPIs, which actually were representing as, I don't know, 500 KPIs in my organization, people would see the consolidation which has happened as a result of it, right? So you just have to do that Pareto to understand which are the most important, which I need to focus on, and then move on slowly.
Right. Got it. And then my second question is that when doing digital transformation, is it advisable to keep the old ways of doing tasks alive and maintain their documentation as the processes change or the data structure change? And if yes, then to what extent should it be done?
See, it depends on how important those old processes were, etc., right? But if you're saying old processes versus new processes, I'm assuming that new processes is bringing in something which is more of more value, right? So I would say this is more of your organization requirement and the kind of organization you sit in. For example, in financial services where I sit in, it is important to maintain at least last 5 years of record. But let's say I was working in a lot of retail organizations prior to my current role, wherein having last 2 years of processes intact was good enough, because retail is not as high impact as financial services would be in terms of the risk that it carries, right? So it is more of a organization to organization, industry to industry differentiation. But I would say as a thumb rule, minimum 2 to 3 years of processes should be there, so that you can go back and check why some decision was taken, etc.
Okay.
But eventually it will phase out, right, as you build in new processes, and they will attain maturity.
Thank you. That answers.
Hi ma'am, actually I have one more question.
Okay.
Yeah, ma'am, actually we also covered AI in today's session. So like I'm not very knowledgeable in that area, but like I've been following the news, and like there are a lot of tech giants in the world today, like social media networks. Twitter is there, Facebook is there, and maybe to a certain extent this question also applies to YouTube. Ma'am, like a lot of research has been done that they're pushing content to the users which is which is driven by an algorithm. Like we do not say that we want to see those things on our social media apps, but it is being pushed to onto us, which sort of creates an alternate reality for every different user. Ma'am, going forward, like what do we see? Do we see that this thing can be controlled via statutory bodies made by the governments across the world, or do we say that these corporate giants will control themselves and behave a little bit ethically?
That's a very controversial question, Pratik, but a simple answer to that would be whenever things like this happen, there would always be some regulatory body which will come and start controlling. For example, for banks, there is OCC, which is an audit, in a way, conduct those audit exams for banks to see whether the banks are following those, being responsible in building the kind of models, etc., that they are, right? Similarly, this concern has been raised for last couple of years, which you raised, right, in terms of the content throwing. And just like food, the news and the feed is also something which, if it goes wrong in us, it produces wrong results, right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
whatever you're hearing is what you start thinking as well, right? And that's where there is a lot of concern about news channels also in terms of bombarding with certain news, etc. But I'm pretty sure sooner or later, not only within India but globally, there would be organizations set up, just like how we have GDPR now in Europe, right, which controls how much of data can you save for your customer, and then the governance around it and the regulations around it. Similar to that, I think even in next couple of years, I can clearly see that there would be some auditory organizations or some auditory regulatory bodies which will be set up for particularly for this as well. I know that in India, we are already hearing about some of those things getting framed at a in the government AI strategy. So I'm sure we'll see that day pretty soon.
Also,
Hi, ma'am.
privacy law is pending in Congress for last 2 years. Hopefully, it will get elected soon.
Yeah, fingers crossed. But yes, let's not discuss about political stuff here.
Yeah, hi, ma'am. So I have a question adding
And
to
I think
what
we
you
are running over time. I can go on for next, maybe 6 minutes more. If
Ma'am, would you like to take about the last one question?
Yes, let's do that.
Okay. You could choose one, ma'am.
Okay. I don't know. First come, first serve. In that case, Arya, you tell me who raised the hand first.
Okay, I think we could ask Arush.
Okay.
And thank you, Arya. Thank you, Mamta, for being available on a Sunday. I just wanted to understand, how do companies measure their relative success of indulging in a digital transformation exercise compared to competition? And how do companies arrive at a single source of truth in the event data insights differ across different sources?
See, I'll answer your second question first and then first question. Okay.
Yeah.
So the second question, I think it relates to a lot of things that we already spoke about in terms of, coming up with that, creating that bedrock of data, which in which we have a data steward team, which really clearly understand what the data is all about, right? And then, creating one single source of truth for each of the data, type. For example, if I am if I'm talking about a retail organization, right? So, the data stewards would understand where the sales data is coming from, where the customer data is coming from, et cetera, right? So they have to clearly articulate and set up processes such that, there are no multiple ways through which the data is coming. And even if it is coming from multiple sources, these data stewards will have to come up with the processes which then bring them all together and create a one single source of truth. So that is an exercise, a very rigorous exercise that needs to be done. No two ways about it and no shortcut to that, Arush. Okay. To your second question, how do they figure out how, to see if the competition is doing it, then they do it, etc. I would say that, yes, it is always good to look at the competition, but at the end of it, see what is good for you, right? See what is required for your organization, and it should not be driven from the competition lens. It should be driven from what is your business requirement is. And the biggest mistake that we do is we start looking at the competition in this case.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you for answering that and answering so many of our questions, ma'am. I'll quickly hand over to Sanjana for a quick vote of thanks.
Righty.
Thanks, Arya, for handing over. Hello, ma'am. This is Sanjana Vashne. Thank you so very much for taking up our questions so patiently. Indeed, it was a fantastic session. We learned great insights around maybe AI, ML, NLP, and many other things. We actually got to know what exactly digital transformation is. It's not only about big technologies, even automating a repetitive, simple data extraction can also be called a digital transformation. So on behalf of the whole batch, I would like to convey heartfelt gratitude to you for taking out time on a weekend and meeting us. So thank you so much. It has been a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much, Sanjana. And just as a parting note, I'll say that given you all are aspiring to be next gen AI/ML practitioners, I can first of all the best to all of you. And I can tell you, with the growth of the industry moving in this direction, there is a lot of scope, there is a lot of opportunities that you all will see. Keep on a lookout. I'm sure XLRI has their own placement setups through which you all get placed. But at the end of it, the kind of skills that you are acquiring, you will always find something interesting in the industry. So all the best, keep learning, and I'm sure you'll find yourself doing really good.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Definitely.
Thank you, ma'am.
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 Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.